Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. Well, welcome back to this episode, the Exploring Washington State podcast. My guest today is Harish Kumar, and I literally just found out seconds ago that as of January of 2023, Harish is now a full-time content creator. So first off, I'll give him a big round of applause for jumping the corporate life. Welcome. Harish, you were introduced to me through my daughter, probably through our social media channels that I never am allowed to look at. So what little I know about you is you're a photographer. And when we talked previously, you indicated that you were primarily a self-taught photographer, right? Okay. So how did we get here? In other words, what I mean by that is when did the photography bug hit you, and how has that worked to the point now where you're a full-time content creator?
Well, it honestly, it goes back quite a bit. So I'll rewind. First time I picked up a camera was 2016.
Oh, wow.
So what is that? That's like 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I was still, I was at Apple at that time. I was working at Apple in retail, and I was working 40 hours a week. So I had little to no time to go out and shoot. But the 2 days that I had, I would always pick up my camera, go out to the nearest hike, and shoot some photos. And luckily, I had a manager at the time. His name is Mio. He is an amazing photographer. He took me on one of my first few hikes, and he's still my best friend this day. So it comes full circle. But he kind of taught me the ropes on, like, this is kind of composition, what you should be doing, shutter speed, those type of settings.
Right.
And that kind of led me to kind of fall in love with photography, and the realization that every single person has a different perspective on what they look through the viewfinder. It's going to be different to everyone. How you compose it, how you edit it. That's what I fell in love with. Is like, I wanted a style for myself that was unique to only me. And so over the years since 2016, I've worked really hard to make sure, like, when someone sees my work wherever it is online, they say, okay, that's a Harish art. Like, I know what that is before I even see the name.
Okay.
And so that's kind of been my journey. I've been with Apple for almost 8 years before I started full-time photography just this past January. So I was still struggling to find time to go out and shoot, but anytime I could take a vacation and go out to a longer hike, I would totally do that. Take a road trip with friends. And I kept owning my skill, like, little by little.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, YouTube is the best resource ever. I mean, I tell people, like, I went to the school of YouTube. I didn't go to film school. I watched many people like Peter McKinnon, Casey Neistat, like those classic people on YouTube that we all watched probably. And just learn the basics, like how to compose a shot, the rule of thirds, all of that stuff, right? And so slowly but surely found my way through photography. And for me, the most important thing was I just kept posting. When I first started, just consistently found some way to post my work and get feedback from people, whether it was constructive or good. I just relished that part of photography. And there were times when I would take months off, maybe even a year off, just because I was focusing on something else in my life. Mm-hmm. And I realized, like, I don't feel as happy as I did when I was actually, like, out there clicking my camera away. So, years went by, and the thought slowly started creeping in my mind, like, maybe I should do this full time, because I kept getting requests like, hey, can you work with us? Can you shoot this product for us? But I just didn't have the time, really. So I think it was early last year, 2022, I was talking about it with my wife, and I was like, hey, I think I want to do it. And she's like, you got my support. Just let me know when. And
that's always so vital that you have your partner's support. Because if you
Yeah,
don't,
exactly.
it's okay.
That's a tough conversation.
So all right. So I got a question here. So
Go
like
ahead.
I warned you. So here's the question. So you're working at Apple. Why weren't you using your iPhone for a camera? Everyone, I've got one here in my hand, everyone uses their phone as a camera. You worked in the mothership of these things, right? You probably helped people daily with their iPhone, or so what was it that drew you to digital photography using a DSLR, not a phone?
Scott, that's a really good question, because not until later did I realize like how powerful this phone was.
Yeah.
So from 2016 to 2020, I would solely use my Canon camera on every shoot that I went to, because I thought, this iPhone can't take as good as quality pictures as my Canon, and I'm just going to stick with this camera because I paid so much for it. I might as well use it.
Yeah, there's that.
And until 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and I was thankfully allowed to stay at home for quite a while, and I started to use my iPhone more, and people started to use this thing called TikTok, right, during quarantine. So I started to post video after video after video, only shot on my iPhone, and I started to get really good feedback on that.
Okay.
Thinking people were saying, "Was this taken on your Canon? Was this taken on something else?" I was like, "No, this is solely my iPhone," and that's when I realized, like, it's a cliche saying, but the best camera is one you always have with you.
Right.
And I quickly learned that, because I didn't have to lug my gear around on hikes anymore. I could just take my phone, maybe take a gimbal of some sort, a tripod,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd be good to go. So I started only using iPhone from 2020
Okay.
till now, and I only pull my camera out when I need to do like talking head videos or really professional shoots. Um, and that's when my social media, I think, really grew a ton, is when I started to say, hey, I'm using only my iPhone. Um, and I was editing strictly using iPhone apps as well.
Oh, okay.
So
But see, don't you think that makes it approachable to that person who's likes to hike, or it doesn't matter what they like to do, but let's just say hike. They like to hike, and they're like, "Wow, his photography's great, but yeah, he's using this several $1,000s worth of gear. He's got to learn how to do it. Blah blah. He's got to carry it around. Blah blah blah." And you're saying, "No, actually, this was shot on an iPhone." And even more impressive to me and I edited it on my iPhone. You literally, this becomes your entire studio, and it's in the back pocket of your pants. And you can literally, if inspiration hits you on the waterfront in Seattle, boom, 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 post it, you're good. I'm not saying that they're better than DSLRs. I'm not. What I am saying that these is empowering to creators, because they are so powerful. So
yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to get to let's remember the show's Exploring Washington State, so we got to be talking about Washington. But the creator thing is, I think, universal. It doesn't matter where you are, and so I think it's really a good thing to kind of unpack a little bit more. You, like a lot of us during the pandemic, were able to spend a great deal of time, honing in on something of interest to you. You chose photography. Other people chose, there's this guy who's making $1 million a year now because he taught people how to bake bread during the pandemic. I mean, it's like, okay, that was his thing, right? We all have our thing. This podcast got started during the pandemic. All of these things that we all, in many ways, the pandemic was kind of like an opportunity for us to completely, by being shut down, we were forced to slow down, and then we had to figure out new ways of keeping ourselves entertained. And many people, dove into the creative side of things. Prior to your photography, though, were you into hiking and all that? Was that your kind of thing out when you weren't working the day job? Are you an outdoors guy naturally?
Um, to be honest, before photography, I didn't hike as much
Okay.
because without that camera, that's just me hiking up a mountain. And for me, the thought of that was too much for me. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do a hike, it's gonna be something that's attainable for me. That's a couple miles round trip.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't find me doing um, like the Mount Si. I think the big one.
Mm-hmm.
I would gravitate towards like Rattlesnake Ledge
Mm-hmm.
or something of that nature. Um, Really, I only started when I picked up a camera. I was like, okay, I want to hike this because at the top I know I see this view,
Right.
so that pushed me to hike more and more.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually, I could find that would motivate me more too, which is why I don't let myself take my camera out, because then I'd have to exercise, and I don't want to do that. Just kidding. Um, but not really. So you've talked about something that, and honestly, you almost said it in a way that, um, I don't want to say you discounted it, but you wanted your own style. Like you said, people look through the viewfinder, they see everybody sees the scene differently through their viewfinder, and I agree with you on that. But you also said you wanted your own style, so that somebody who saw a picture knew it was yours before they saw your name on it. That's not easy. That isn't something that a lot of photographers or artists in general are able to accomplish. And you kind of just threw it out there like that was your goal, and you've obtained that. So how, what did you focus on to get to this point? How did you, because like I said, let's just use Peter McKinnon, for example. In anybody that's listening to this, it's looked at YouTube at all, has probably seen Peter McKinnon, right? His work's amazing. I don't know that if I were looking at 6 photographs, I could pick out a Peter McKinnon from other quality photographs. Nothing against Peter McKinnon. He's infinitely more successful photographer than I will ever be. What did you focus on to get to this point with your art?
So it's a good question. I keep coming back to this. I think it ties in with Washington State because I wanted to appreciate something about our state that few people do, and I think it's got to be the moodiness and the rain and the weather that we have. We get a bad rep for it around the country and saying, "Oh, Seattle, it always rains." Um, I'm happy for that because when it's raining, I am the happiest person on earth. I am. You'll find me out there shooting with my camera more often than not, um, and you won't find many people like that because when I'm
No.
out there shooting, it'll just be me, and I love it. So
Okay.
um, that's what really drove me to find my own style. Is okay, how can I showcase this beauty of the PNW rather than the photos I always see, which is Mount Rainier and all of its sun and glory. And okay, but what about the misty woods of the Olympic National Park that don't get shown as often?
Right.
So I really wanted to focus in on that, and um, I ended up just checking the weather app every day and saying, okay, it's cloudy. I'm going to head out today. I'm going to hope for some rain, hope for some early fog, and really capture that mood. And thankfully, every time I did, it most likely would rain, and I didn't see many people around me. So any composition I ever wanted was there without any crowds.
Interesting.
So I kept doing that over and over again, and I slowly built up a catalog of moody landscape photos. And I learned to edit it in a certain way to somewhat highlight a portion of the photograph that I've appreciated, whether it was a flower coming up from the ground that had purple petals, right? But it was raining and moody
Mm-hmm.
in the background. I wanted that to be the focus of the picture. So that's what I kept doing and doing. And eventually people would message me and be like, hey, how did you edit it like this? Like what do you do to bring out this darkness in the Pacific Northwest? And honestly, I was just like, just go out and shoot when it's raining and cloudy, and you'll find the same conditions that I do.
And everyone goes, no, I don't want to.
and they go, no, not going to do it. So that's how I really built my style. And now people do say, like, I can look at your photo and know that it's a childish Harish, or that's my name on social media, right? So so I'm glad that I've built my style up for myself, and I think there are pros and cons to that about building your own style, because you have such pressure to keep the style consistent. But I think as an artist, you are always evolving and creating new styles and growing as a photographer. And so slowly I've been thinking, okay, I do love my style and I'm forever going to keep that Moody style, but I want to do something different. So that's just been something in the back of my mind that I've been thinking about.
Well, you know, many famous artists, which obviously then implies even multitudes of non-famous artists, have changed their styles through their careers. You know, Picasso comes to mind. You know, the Cubist stuff, the Blue Period, all these things. You know, his work looked dramatically different as he progressed through his career. So you should, as an artist, in my opinion, be free to express yourself as the stages of your life unfold. So I'm going to go backwards now. Prior to Apple. So how are you a native Washingtonian? How long have you lived here? What brought you here if you're not native?
So we'll just rewind all the way back. So I was born in India.
Okay.
And when I was 5, me and my parents moved to Arkansas, which
Sorry.
is, yes, thank you. Which is
that.
quite different from Seattle and India.
Yes.
So we stayed there for about 10, 11 years till I was 16.
Okay.
And then we moved to Seattle. Then I was in high school. Finished high school, went through college at UW, actually.
Okay.
And really, I've been in Washington ever since. So since I was 16. So right now I'm almost 32.
Okay.
So about 15 years I've been in Washington.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you what, I'm making fun of Arkansas. It's probably not fair, but that seems like an odd place for a family from India to move to the U.S. for. I mean, if you would have said Boston, New York, you know, the major metropolitan areas, why Arkansas?
So Arkansas, the northwest pocket of Arkansas, there's a city called Bentonville.
Yep.
And that is the headquarters of Walmart for the entire world.
Yep.
So a lot of Indian families actually migrated there because we got jobs as software engineers.
Okay.
Or software managers. And so my dad was one of those people.
Okay.
So it was actually quite strange and comforting at the same time, because although we felt alone, we were surrounded by hundreds of Indian families. And so we would know everyone in the city, even though it was a very small city. So
okay, so Walmart, it was a big thing. In other words, you know, it was one of those global corporations. Okay, and then you moved to Seattle. I'm gonna guess that Dad took a job with a different tech company of some form.
He did, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. That journey now. Thank you for letting me connect those dots. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to high school in Seattle, and you went to the UW. What did you major in at the U?
I majored in business.
Okay.
So I went to Foster School of Business. Yeah.
Okay. And that's helped you with your photography career?
You know what, Scott? It has not helped me with my photography. I'll be very honest. Okay. I keep telling my parents, like, if I would have known back then that I would have got into photography, maybe I would have saved you some money from paying part of my college, and they laughed about it. But I'll say this: it allowed me to be more structured now, because I am more serious about taking it seriously as a business rather than as just a hobby. So that I will say, like, I know how to manage my finances and things like that.
Okay.
But other than that, like, we talked about in the beginning, it was all self-taught. Yeah.
But it is going to help you with the business of art. I mean, let's be real. The business of art is something that a lot of people that are creatives struggle with. A lot of my friends, a lot of people that I know, very creative, very talented. And then they make decisions that impact their ability to be creative by, just doing things that they're very ill-advised. Okay. So did you ever, so this is, one of the things when I think about the UW campus is I think of the cherry trees when they blossom is just magnificent. When you were walking around campus as a student, did that ever did that pique your curiosity that, cause those are beautiful. That's an iconic setting for a very brief period of time. Did that ever make you want to say, gosh, I do want to do, is that, you see what I'm saying? Was that an early inspiration maybe, or were you just too busy with your headphones on and a backpack on chugging to your next class?
More of the latter, honestly. But what's funny is maybe you can experience this. You've come to the same place in different stages in your life and you see things differently. Mm-hmm. The same cherry blossom might just be something that you're rushing past towards class. And now when I visit, I'm just astonished and I pull out my phone and my camera and I try to find angles to take pictures. And so it's interesting. Different parts of your life, you notice the little things, back then I was like, oh, there's so many people here. Why is this so crowded? And so I was just rushing to class.
I'm going to be late to class. Notice. Get out of my way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's jump. So 8 years with Apple and on the retail side. So for that, I'm truly sorry for you. Cause even though the Apple stores are amazing, it's still retail and you still get people. And
this is true.
It wasn't scary at all to leave the safety of a steady paycheck to go independent, was it? No terror?
Yeah, absolutely no terror. Well, to be honest, it was a long time coming. So a couple years, I had been already thinking about it, talking to my managers at Apple, talking to my parents, my wife. And so the decision should have been made a long time ago, but I was hesitant because, like you said, it's terrifying coming from, I know exactly how much I'm going to get every other week to, I know 0% of my income. What is it going to be? Is it going to be higher than what it was at Apple? Is it going to be lower? Mm-hmm. So that's the unpredictability sometimes of freelance photography. And to a certain extent, I felt okay with that because it was still something that I loved so much and was passionate about. I would rather be doing that than, sitting in an Apple store, selling iPhones to someone or managing a group of people, right? Which I loved in its own pocket, but this was something I was so passionate about. I was ready to take on all the uncertainty that came with it.
Well, and I don't know what you made at Apple. For sake of conversation, every 2 weeks you got paid X. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
X. And it was stable. You knew you had good days. You had a slow Wednesday and you had a horrible Saturday if you had to work weekends, or your team that worked for you, somebody called in sick and you're scrambling, or all these things that happen in a retail environment. Okay. But every 2 weeks, X. Now, as an independent, you're getting maybe X plus or a percentage of X. You don't know, but you're spending your time doing things that hopefully put that stupid grin on your face, so you're like, I'm getting paid to do something I love doing. I think most people find that rewarding. And as long as they can keep the lights on and be comfortable, even if it's less or more, it doesn't really matter. You're being creative. You're getting to live the passion that you have. So your business now, you're a professional photographer. So that implies you sell things. What are you selling?
Well, for a lack of a better word, I'm selling myself, really. Right now, I don't have any traditional products that I'm selling. I'm looking towards, prints and things like that and down the road. But right now it's, how can I help you as a brand promote yourself through me? Mm-hmm. And so that's been my biggest source of income, right?
Okay.
So thankfully, over the past few years, as I've kind of leveled up and figured out what my style was, people have been reaching out to me, saying, "Hey, can you shoot this? Can you shoot that?" Not
Mm-hmm.
that I've had the time to do it, but it was good knowing that those brands were willing to work with me.
Right.
So now that I have 24/7 to do exactly that, it's been great. Both learning how to reach out to brands, which can be scary, but also communicating with people that reach out to me and saying, "Hey, this is what I think I'm worth. What
Mhm.
do you think?" And so that whole conversation has been really interesting to me.
That's another one that creatives can suffer with is pricing their value. So what type of brands have you been working with? What sort of product shoots are you doing, and how does that work into your style of photography?
So typically the brands that I say yes to are travel adventure brands that align with my values.
Mhm.
So brands that allow me to travel using their products seamlessly. I don't like to just throw products in people's faces on
Right.
social media and be like, "Hey, I'm promoting this. I'm promoting this."
Right. Give
I
me an
don't. I
example
don't
of
work.
one. Give me an example of a brand you've worked with that kind of seamlessly went in.
Yeah. So Danner Boots has
Mhm.
been one that I was really proud to work with. I mean, I wore Danners before they reached out to me, so I was like, I already have a pair on my feet right now, so this is perfect
Okay.
timing.
Right.
So Danner Boots is one of them. DJI is another one.
Okay.
Um, I didn't have a drone until 2019, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take it seriously until a couple years ago, and so I really started to like explore. Okay, I can take a completely different view of this world with this drone, and I took it to Iceland last summer for my honeymoon with my wife, and that's when I really fell in love with using the drone. And I was like, okay, I have to. This has got to be a staple in all of my photos from now on.
Okay.
So DJI is one of them.
Okay.
Another one is I work with a lot of um, camper van companies. They allow me to move around
Mm-hmm.
freely, and
Mm-hmm.
that's I don't mind honestly staying in a van. Like I'm not someone that's like I have to have a hotel every night.
Right.
That's not me. I can stay in a camper van and sleep in there anytime. So companies like Cabana, which is a local camper van company that started here. Um, there's a couple of Iceland camper van companies that I've also worked with. So
Yeah.
that's kind
So
of the niche.
so
Yeah.
okay. Once again, we're exploring Washington State, but I'm going to ask a question about another country, much less another state. Why why Iceland? What was the? I mean, it's beautiful, but why Iceland?
You know what? I had seen so many photos and videos of it as I've been on social media the past couple of years, and it just seemed like a different world to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to experience it for myself, knowing like the type of photography that I take. It just looks so ethereal and moody. And once I got there, I was like, I fell in love.
Okay.
And I've already been back another time since then. Um, and it reminded me a lot of the Pacific Northwest, which is why I was so drawn to it.
Okay.
I always call it the little brother of the PNW.
Now they
Um,
might object to that. I'm just gonna,
they probably will,
they might
honestly.
object to that one, but I see your point, but they might object.
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly why I was drawn to
Okay.
it. I mean, it just reminded me so much of home.
So you really like to work with brands and I like the idea that you said that seamlessly fit into what you're doing. Uh, I'm going to try to pick some arbitrary big corporate brand that nobody really likes. I don't know. Anything I say will be wrong here. I'm just going to say Nike. Okay, let's just say
Okay.
Nike. And and
Ooh.
and your camera fell when I said that. That was funny,
Yeah.
folks. You couldn't see this. I said Nike, and his camera just dropped. It was like, I don't know. Maybe I scared him. So, a large corporation like Nike comes to you and says, "Hey, we're looking for, we want you to take some photos of our baseball cleats." That I don't know. That doesn't seem like a seamless fit for you. I mean, no, just maybe not. That's not the right direction for your your focus. So I like the fact that you seemingly are saying you're being conscious of the choices of who you affiliate yourself with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the hardest thing about being a creative is saying no. Saying no to work is really hard because you know that it will help you and it will increase your paycheck for that month, but is it worth it? Is it going to align with your values? What is your audience going to think, right? Like, so let's say it was Nike and they reached out and they said, "Hey, we have some Nike trail shoes that we want you to partner with." I'm like, "Okay, that
but
more
like
closely aligns with
baseball
me."
cleats, not a good fit for your focus.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I warned you that this would be all over the place. So I want to come back to from a technical aspect. Let's say you're using Danner boots. Let's just use. Maybe we use them as an example for my question? Okay. So Danner boots hires you to do some content creation for them, and you're taking out. You mentioned earlier you use Canon gear. So let's just say, for sake of this conversation, you're using your Canon gear. You're out there. You're doing the shoot and all that. When it comes to post processing and editing, what tools do you use to edit your photos? I know you said you did everything on the iPhone before, but I have a feeling your Canon work might not be all edited on an iPhone. You're probably sitting in front of some Apple product. I'm just curious what you're using.
So I mainly use Adobe Lightroom, Adobe Photoshop when I edit my photos.
Mm-hmm.
And when I take videos on my Canon, I tend to use either Premiere Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, or recently I've been dabbling with DaVinci a lot. So I'm still stuck between like which one to use, but those are the main apps that I edit with.
And that's a whole other. If you, like you said, you went to the University of YouTube, that seems to be an ongoing debate right now. Those two platforms.
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you. So, what's your initial thoughts on DaVinci?
You know what, DaVinci is. If I'll say this, if you really want to learn color grading, that is the app for you because the amount of tools you get, the way you can simply manipulate your video into something that of your own vision.
Mm-hmm.
I think DaVinci has probably the best tools out there.
Okay.
I've noticed that Premiere is creeping up with more and more updates. They're getting closer and closer to what I would imagine is like the ideal app.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest to use, I think, is Premiere. The most intuitive. Like if you were a beginner video editor, like I would probably jump into Premiere.
You'd go with Premiere. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to that question, but you know what I mean? There's plenty of people that would say they're using Final Cut, you know, plenty of people are using iMovie. Some of the stuff I've seen from iMovie is like, wow, that's pretty cool. You were able to do that in iMovie, which is, or, you know, I've always found Premiere to be frustrating personally. How's that? I'll just say I don't speak Premiere. It just doesn't work for me. And I haven't found a video editing app that makes sense to me anyway. So I save myself the aggravation. I don't go there anymore. Okay. When you're out, if somebody were to quote unquote call you up and say, "Hey, Harish, we want you to take our product. Here's our product. It's a good fit for you. I don't care what it is. You can pick what that is. We want you to take our product out, and we want images of our product in Washington State." Where are some go-to places for you for that type of scenario?
For me, I would say I frequent the Olympic National Park a lot. I mean, the majority of my posts are probably from that park. So specifically, Lake Crescent is a huge love of mine on all the areas surrounding it. So there are a lot of waterfalls, like Merrymere Falls is a great one. very family accessible, very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Gold Duck Falls is also right there. I think 15, 20 minutes from there. Also another easy hike. And it's quite interesting how we take it for granted, but that hike is very easy, but the view that you get at the end is just astonishing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel like we deserve it after that hike. So I always tell people like you have to see that view. So that little pocket right there, like within 20, 30 minutes has so many things to
Okay.
just to take in, whether you're shooting brand photography or not. Like, yeah,
Okay. So you're a fan of the Olympic National
big fan.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you something. I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's a negative question. So I'm going to ask you to make a negative statement here, which
Okay.
you know how well those go over these days. In your opinion, give me an example of an overdone area for photography. You mentioned Rainier, and you know, got to be careful what we say about Rainier because it's it's Mount Rainier. But where do you think has been overdone? Or maybe I'll let you off the hook a little bit here, but maybe overdone because people they rushed. Is it Cary Park in Seattle that's got the view of Seattle? I mean, it seems like everybody rushes to that one spot, stands on the X, puts their camera into this mode, pushes the button, and goes, "Look, Seattle." I don't see a lot of creativity from that particular viewpoint. Do you have any other ones that you would say is, you know, people just don't?
You know, that's a tough question. First thing that comes to mind is something like Rattlesnake Ledge.
Okay.
I have seen a lot of people in varying levels of photography go there and have the same picture from the top, and I'm just like, okay, enough is enough. Like we've
Right.
all seen Rattlesnake, or when I see another elopement photographer go up there and take pictures, I'm like, you can do a little bit better than Rattlesnake. I understand that maybe hiking in a dress and a suit is easier at Rattlesnake than it is at other locations,
Right.
so that could be a reason. But yeah, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind.
So I'll give you a couple more that I think are overdone.
Sure.
The Space Needle.
Yes.
Pike Place Market.
Yep.
You know, the big sign. They're beautiful. I mean, these are not bad locations. I am not disrespecting. Somebody will say something bad about me, but you know, I'm not disrespecting the Space Needle or Pike Place Market. It's just it's been done so much. It's hard to, unless there's a weather incident like lightning hitting the Space Needles. Oh, if you captured that, that's very cool. But if it's a Saturday afternoon and it's 72 degrees and sunny out, that shot's been done ad nauseum. Another one, and have you ever gone out to Palouse Falls in Eastern Washington?
I have just once though.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But a lot of the photographs that get captured there are remarkably the same exact shot.
Yeah.
And I like to see, you know, don't get me wrong, these are all beautiful places to go and see in Washington State. But I do feel like it's almost like there's a lineup and you're like, photographer, stand here, use these settings, click, post, tag this, you'll get viewed. And it just seems very formulaic to me. Those are locations that I think are that come to mind when I think are overdone of our state, because there are so many beautiful places in the state to experience. And that's one of the things. I get the feeling you're kind of a West Side person more than traveling over to the East side of the state, which is radically different because you like the moody, dare I say, dreary, rainy stuff. In Eastern Washington, we don't have that.
Right.
But you know, you think about it. 4 hours from where you are in Seattle right now, not taking into account traffic, you could be at Rainier, you could be at the Pacific Ocean, you could be in Canada, you could be in Eastern Washington in a myriad of places. I mean, you know, it's foreseeable in a 12-hour day, not taking into account traffic, you could drive 4 hours, work for 4 hours, drive back for 4 hours, and have radically different images every time you did that. So that's kind of cool. What haven't you experienced here yet behind the lens that you want to?
Specifically in Washington, there are parts of central South Washington that I would love to experience more of. There are a couple of waterfalls and forests kind of on the border of Oregon and Washington. I think uh what is the name of the forest? It might be the Gifford Pinchot
Mhm.
National Forest,
Yep.
I believe, is crossing both the borders. And I've only been there once, and it was on the way to Oregon. And I can still remember it. We were driving there in November, me and a friend, and it was raining, and then it started snowing, and I was just like, "This is amazing. I have to come back." We were on a rush to get to a certain place by sunrise, but so ever since that, I haven't gone back. But that area of Washington is so beautiful. There's
Mhm.
so many waterfalls that I've only either visited once or I've never been to. So I would love to do a road trip around there.
Yeah, the Columbia Gorge. I mean, the Oregon side of the Columbia Gorge gets a lot of press, but the Washington side of the Columbia Gorge has got a ton of things to do. I mean, if you're, if you want to hike, you want to climb, all those things. But visually, you've got just it's a target rich environment. Let's just put it that way. I mean, you couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Where else? Where else? Have you been up to? Well, you go to the Olympic National Forest, but do you ever go out to like Port Townsend? Do you ever go up? Because that's a town that I think has got great architecture. I love the look of downtown Port Townsend, and it gets interesting weather because of where it's located. So you can get kind of moody there. You been up there? Have you done Fort Worden or anything like that?
I have been north of the Olympic National Park. I've been to Cape Flattery,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which is, I guess, as north as you can go, most northwestern point of the U.S. Um, Port Townsend, I feel like I passed through it. I have not
Yeah.
stopped in Port Townsend, but you're right. There are a lot of places around there that I
Yeah.
need to explore more. Um, I'm very familiar with the coast, the
Mm-hmm.
Washington coast, but I still feel like the southern portion of Washington coast I'm not as familiar with.
Okay.
Um, Oregon coast, very familiar, but southern southern Washington coast, that might be my next trip because
Okay.
I've done a lot of Rialto, La Push, Second Beach, those type of things,
Mm-hmm.
but those get more press
Yep.
than the other part of Washington.
So does your wife go along with you when you're on these trips, by the way?
For most of them, she does.
Okay.
Especially when I was at Apple and we would only go on the weekends, she would be have more time as well. So we would take a day trip or overnight stay at a cabin or something. And
Mm-hmm.
she, I'm going to give you a little bit of background into my wife and I, but we met because of photography.
Okay.
This was in 2020 during the pandemic. She, we had a mutual friend through Instagram, and um, that friend posted my account on her Instagram, was like, "Hey, check this photographer out. He's pretty cool." And so my wife messaged me, back then, a stranger to me, and she was like, "Hey, dude, great photography. I love your feed." And I was like, "Hey," I was like, "Thank you so much." And we started messaging from there on Instagram, and we started FaceTiming from there, and we started dating from there as well. And a couple months later, I proposed
Wow.
in New York City on top of the Rockefeller Building. That's where
Okay.
she lived, and the rest is history. So we got married a year and a half later, 2022. But photography was literally the first thing that brought us together. So
That's a
ever
cool
since
story.
then, yeah, ever since then, she's come on all my adventures, and she's
Okay.
grown to love this area of the U.S. Even though she still likes sunny days more than rainy days,
Well, most of
and
us
I'm
do. I
trying
got to
to.
be honest with you, man. You're in the
Yeah, I know.
minority here. You're really kind of a. Yeah, most of us don't see the world the same way you do, which might help with your style, by the way. All right. And maybe we
I'm
want to vicariously have a rainy day through photography
There you go.
versus the actual experience.
Yeah.
All right. So I gotta ask you, these are kind of non-photography questions here. We're gonna shift gears again. I noticed you're drinking coffee. I'm drinking coffee. I ask everybody this question: where's a great place to get coffee? And since you're in the Seattle area, I mean, that's like I've just lobbed you a softball. But where do you like to go for coffee in the Seattle area?
Well, I'll give you two places that are my favorite. So number one is it's called Venture Coffee.
Okay.
It's in Ballard.
Okay.
Small little coffee shop. My wife and I lived in Ballard for a year, and we used to walk/drive there a ton, almost every day. And they had this latte called the Maple Bourbon Latte,
All right.
which doesn't have bourbon in it, but it's just a maple bourbon latte. And um, we were obsessed with it. So hands down, she would say the same thing. That's our favorite coffee shop.
Okay.
Now we live in more proper Seattle, so Cherry Street Coffee is a favorite of mine right now. I think there's a couple of locations in Seattle, but that's my favorite coffee shop.
So what's your go-to drink when you go there?
Go-to drink there, it's called Milky Way. I have a very big sweet tooth, so anything that is just loaded with chalk syrup and whatnot, I'm there. So I think that has a lot of caramel and other chocolate things in it.
Okay. All right.
So I'm a big fan.
You're a big fan. All right. Yeah, I've not tried either of those two. And of course, as much coffee as I drink, it's impossible to try, all the coffee shops, although I have made a big effort of doing that. And then unfortunately, I like a shop. Next time I come back, it's not there anymore. And there's 27 other new ones I have to try, which gives a little, it's my work is never done. Poor me. I'm going to come over to Seattle. It's going to be lunchtime. I'm going to want to grab something to eat. Where are you recommending I go for lunch these days?
That's a good question. Well, I guess it depends on what you like, but personally,
no, your recommendation. It doesn't matter what I'm going to trust you.
Okay. I love Thai food quite a bit. So there is this place called Mantra Thai, which is just down the street from where I live, but it is it just has the right amount of spice and flavor to it that doesn't make you want to just drink a ton of water and milk to get rid of the spice, but just the right amount that has a kick to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've frequented that quite a bit, and it's made it to our top of our list.
Okay.
In Seattle. So that, and then I'll give you one more. My parents don't live in the state anymore, so I'm always craving authentic Indian food.
Okay.
So there's this restaurant called Mother India in Seattle.
Okay.
They have amazing biryani.
Okay.
So that is probably something I'll order probably once a week.
Oh, wow.
And just because I miss my mom's cooking so much, and so I think of her, I think of that food, and I'm like, okay, I have to get it. So here's the thing. I mean, all right, I grew up in a household where my mother didn't cook, so missing my mom's cooking is missing going to the restaurant I grew up in as a child. When people say they miss the flavors of home, wherever home may be, whether it be, Seattle or Arkansas or Iceland, it doesn't matter. When you find a place of a restaurant that kind of reminds you of that, of your family's cooking style, if you will, that's interesting. So I know very little about Indian food. What I've had, I've enjoyed. I don't have my palate of Indian food is probably about like saying, oh, I like hamburgers. I ate at McDonald's. It's not very educated. What makes that place authentic to you? What is it that's different than, say, any other, like when I see Indian restaurants, like there's one in Tacoma I'm thinking of that, they run a buffet. So it's really popular because it's a buffet. Hey, it's X dollars. You can eat all you want. I don't necessarily think of buffets as being good food.
So what makes this place authentic for you versus, say, any other Indian restaurant kind of that's been just commercialized?
Well, I would say that they're they're not afraid to be authentic in a way that they will throw together spices and flavors that you wouldn't think work together,
Mm-hmm.
but they do, and they taste amazing. Um, and they they give you a huge portion every single time, which I always appreciate from restaurants, not skimping out on food, right? And it's a very affordable place as well, so that
Okay.
that plays a huge factor into it. So they gave a lot of food. They're affordable. It tastes great. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't ask for more from a restaurant,
Yeah,
and
that's
it
kind
always reminds me of home when I'm eating it. It's like I'm back in my mom's kitchen,
of okay.
or I'm back in India. Just
So what's the
um,
best dish your mom makes? What's your mom's signature dish to you? Like you're going home, you're going to go visit your parents. Mom's agreed to cook anything you want. What's it going to be?
she makes this okra fry, which is just delicious. I mean, I am not too certain what kind of spices she puts into it, but uh, it has, I would imagine, a good amount of um, I'm not sure what the spice is called, but some sort of chili in
Okay.
it. Um, but she fries the okra just right, so it's not completely black, but a little bit.
All right.
So you can see the green and the black, and then we mix it with rice, and just amazing. So that's probably the best thing she makes amongst many things.
Okay. But that's what
That's my
you,
personal
that's
favorite.
your first. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's kind of, you know, it's always fun to listen to people when they, you know, they reminisce about what they like, you know, and
Yeah.
everybody's family's got a different dynamic. You know, my dad made a pasta salad that before he passed away, my daughter uh, worked really hard to recreate. You know, it's a very simple salad. I mean, it's just the ingredients are just a handful of ingredients. But it was the way my dad made it that was always.
Mm.
He would like after I had left home and moved out and I mean, he would bring me. I made you a pasta salad. I was like, oh, this is great. Even when I was trying to not eat carbs, I was like, oh, that's out the window. We're eating this thing, and that's my family memory is like that. And so, but everybody's, something as simple as a pasta salad. Everybody's got these cool things. Earlier on, we're going to bounce back to your folks though, because this is a question. So earlier on, so you went to the UW, you majored in business, and then now you're in we'll call it the arts. Okay, you're non-corporate.
Yep.
And you said your parents were supportive.
Yes.
What was that like when you kind of had that first conversation with them? Like, gee, mom, gee, dad, I think I want to be a full-time artist. And that's for every family. We want our kids to be happy. We want our kids to succeed. That's out of left field to somebody who'd gone to business school. So what was it like? What was that conversation like?
You know what? I think I was more nervous than my parents were, which is funny because I think they've grown to know me as someone that if I make a decision, that means I've thought about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, like they've seen my photography for the last 6, 7 years. So they had an inkling of a feeling that someday this would happen. They just didn't know when. So they were prepared for it mentally. So when I sprung it on them, they didn't have much, they weren't surprised, right?
Okay.
So they were very supportive from the start. I think I told them in 2022, like early 2022, and they were just like, "Why didn't you do it sooner?" And I
Wow.
was like, "That's why I love you guys."
See,
And
that's so awesome when your support network, if you will, parents spouses, friends. A lot of people don't get it, man. A lot of people, like, I remember, like, my grandfather wanted me to stay in a union job to save 10% of my pay because that's what he did, and it worked for him. And so when I stopped that type of work, I just remember him going, I don't understand. I just don't get it. I go, well, I want to be self-employed. No, why are you giving up the security, the benefits, and all this? Because I go, but it's deadening to me. It was not I was not a happy person. So having your parents' supports, that's got to be just like super awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think my little brother has been really supportive. I only have one sibling,
Okay.
and he's 6 years younger than me,
Mm-hmm.
but infinitely more successful in his career already. And thankful for that. It's funny, as a big brother, I look up to him, which is awesome. And so he's been really supportive and been like, hey, Harish, like anything you need from me, like I'm here for you. Like,
What's your
if you
brother
ever
do?
need.
What's his career path?
So he is a software manager, software engineer.
Okay.
So right now he's more managing people.
Mm-hmm.
But
And is he in the Seattle area?
He's
Okay.
about to move to New York City in a month.
Okay.
He got a big job at New York Times recently. Wow. So as a software engineer, so I'm very excited for him.
You don't think of newspapers as having software engineers.
I didn't either, and
that's kind of cool.
They need them. So yeah,
that's kind of cool. Well, as it moves online, it doesn't make sense, but that's cool. All right.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. So yeah, he's been great support. My family's been great support. That's awesome. My wife, obviously, and so it's been a good transition in that sense. Okay. Not having to really worry about that.
So in the first 6-7 months of doing this full time, we'll wrap this up. So I'm going to ask you, what's been the two biggest surprises that you've had so far? Number one, positive, like, wow, this was not expected in a good way. And the alternate of that is, oh, I didn't see that one coming. So in the first 6 months, what sort of, ahas have you had?
I would say what I thought would be the best part about being freelance is having all the time in the world, but that can be it can have the opposite effect, because someone that has relished having some sort of structure in my life, working at Apple for so long, and now that I have absolutely no structure, or didn't at the beginning when I started freelance, I was like, okay, I have all day to go shoot and blah 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 and edit and post, and I was like, wait a second. I ended up doing things that really didn't help me. I would spend my money on another lens that I didn't need, or go somewhere else to shoot where I need to focus on this instead.
Right.
So quickly I realized, like, the best part about it is also exactly that, in another sense. Like, I have all this time and I could really focus in on, okay, I want to work on my video editing. And now I have all the time in the world to do just that. So I really focused in on using Premiere Pro and DaVinci, and now I've gotten so much better at it in the last 6-7 months, and I can take on more clients that ask for that type of stuff.
Right.
And so that privilege I didn't have before, having only 2 days off a week. So both pros and cons of having this much time.
Similar. I've heard, and I understand that all too well myself. All right. So a couple last questions. Number one, what didn't I ask you that I should have? This is the lazy man's way out to make sure that,
I get a lot of questions through people that message me and ask me, like, a lot of my audience, I get insights, demographics, and things like that. They're Instagram and TikTok, and a lot of them are from India, actually.
Interesting.
And so a lot of them message me like, hey, you are someone that I look up to in terms of someone that looks like me, or sounds like me,
Mm-hmm.
and they asked me like, how can I become a photographer like you? And they assume that it takes a huge amount of work, or you have to have this many followers. And the same message to all of them is, whatever camera you have right now, just go out and shoot and create content, share it to the world, because you never know
Mm-hmm.
which one people will resonate with. That's the beauty of social media. You can go viral overnight,
Mm-hmm.
over a couple of days, just because the way you see the world is so special and
Right.
is unique to everyone else, that you just have to post it and believe in yourself. And that's the first step. Instead of always, I like to call it like, I was always on YouTube saying, "Oh, I gotta emulate this person," or my style has to be like this person. No, it just has to be exactly like you, and that's what makes you unique, right? So that's what I tell people when they say like, "How do I do photography full time?"
Mm-hmm.
That's how I got where I am, is just by believing in what editing style I have and how I look at the world. So
Okay.
that's what I tell people.
Well, I mean, you're spot on. So I do have one last question I didn't ask you. Childish Harish.
Yeah.
Why?
So when I first made the account, it had one meaning. So I must have made the account 2014, 2015. I was a huge fan of Childish Gambino.
Okay.
There was an artist,
Yep.
a hip hop musician. His real name is Donald Glover. You probably heard of him.
Yep.
Um, so I was like, okay, this is cool. Let me just take part of his name and put my name on it. So Childish Harish. And then I realized like it's actually quite a fitting name, because I'm childish in the best way. Like I'm a kid at heart. I love chocolate. I just like all the sweet things in life. I like having fun and just laughing and just taking life as it comes.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife always says that, like, you're always um so happy, like even when there's like nothing going on. Like I just go out in nature and I can just be happy and not really think about like, oh, I have this bill due next week or something. Like I just kind of focus in on like what makes me happy that day. And um so that kind of reminded me like, oh, I can be childish in a good way.
Okay.
And so that name had a new reason, it had a new meaning. Um
Okay.
so yeah.
Well, and look at kids. I mean, they're innately curious. They're not afraid to ask questions. And as we grow up, we become less inclined to want to ask that question for fear of, somebody's going to, what do you mean you don't know that? Why are you asking? I mean, we're always afraid of that feedback. So kids, I think it's a great handle. So where can people, so give you a chance here, where can people find your work, and where do you recommend that they go and, find you online?
So the best place to find my work is both on Instagram at Childish Harish, and TikTok. I started in 2020, and that is through the PNW. So THROUGH, the PNW.
Okay.
Um, I I absolutely love what TikTok has done for creators and for me since 2020. So a lot of my work is on there, very similar to what is on Instagram, but
Mhm.
um, I think even more short form videos on there. And so yeah, to those two places you can find me. Fingers crossed, 2023 is the year of YouTube for me. So
Okay.
hopefully I get on that platform and create more storytelling, more videos about myself and how I shoot and things like that, and more long form. So
More long form. Okay.
yeah.
We'll put links to those for you in the show notes. All right. We're going to wrap it up. Last question, final question. Maybe the most important question I've asked you today. Cake or pie, and why?
Ooh, that's tough. I have to say cake, because I'm a huge birthday person. I love birthdays, and birthday cake I think is one of the best flavors ever. Even when it's in something else, like birthday cake pops, like lollipops, or
Mhm.
birthday cake milkshakes. I've had tons of birthday cake flavors, and so cake in general, I love it.
Cake is it. Okay. Well,
Yep.
there's no wrong answer there, by the way. So, it's like, what's fun is every time I ask that question, and I stole that question from another show. I mean, I was interviewing this guest, and the backstory here is that you interviewed this guest, and the connection died, and the whole episode was lost. But during this conversation, she said, "This is a question we asked our guests," and I'm just like shamelessly just claimed it. It's mine. Because what's funny is it's a very simple question: cake or pie, and why? And then the looks on people's faces almost always like, oh, God. Like, I've asked them, Republican or Democrat, or, I mean, it's just like, there's no wrong answer here. Your reason is your reason. There's no wrong answer. And some people are very quick to say X, Y, doesn't matter. And then some people are like, I don't know that they've answered the question, and it's been weeks since I've talked to them. I think they're still up at night going, I don't know, is it cake or is it pie? And it's kind of fun. And I don't want you to ask me the question, because honestly, I don't know my answer either. So so cake, birthday cake, cool. You like to take photography with an element in it that works, and you've stylized it to your view of the world. I think that's awesome. And congratulations on making the jump. There's nothing wrong with corporate America. Not saying that, but it can be terrifying for somebody, and it doesn't always work. I mean, if it did, everyone would eventually just jump, and then the Apples of the world wouldn't have people working there. I mean, because we'd all be independent. Of course, there wouldn't be iPhones for us to work with, and so that'd be sad. So, but no, I mean, it is terrifying and it should be terrifying. Frankly, I don't think it should be, but I think it's important that whether you succeed or fail at it, and not you, this is just the royal person, royal you. If you think you want to do something, whether it be photography or let's just say pottery, you want to do pottery, and you jump and you fail, I think that's better than not jumping and not knowing.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for taking the jump. I wish you all the best success.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed sitting here talking to you today. And you got anything to say?
I would say just follow your passions. Don't be afraid to take that jump, like you said.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. Glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.